Who frowned me this face? Take two Doctor Who review, where I re-review episodes of the modern era Doctor Who that I have, in fact, reviewed previously. Long freaking time ago. Let's see how they hold up on a rewatch. So, we have arrived at the debut proper of Peter Capaldi, the 12th Doctor. My favorite Doctor. Let's just get that on the record now, in case you are watching this but weren't aware of that. Peter Capaldi is my favorite iteration of the Doctor at present. I say at present because it has changed before. It may change again. It's changed a few times over the years, but right now, that's where it is. And it's worth noting that I didn't love him right off. I didn't dislike him, but I didn't connect with the guy immediately. I'm not going to dwell on this too much, but what really got me about him is the journey that his Doctor went through. Series over series. He, to me, felt like he had more of an arc actually, I would say more than any other Doctor. Most Doctors don't have an arc at all. And the ones that do, I don't think any of them went through as much of a personal transformation as Capaldi's 12th Doctor. So part of what I love about him is where he ended up by the end of Series 10, but also watching him go through that from where he started through to the end. So it's interesting for me now to go back and watch it, knowing how much I'm going to grow to love him. And it does give me a fresh perspective on this. I don't think I've been mean, but I haven't exactly been kind to Deep Breath in the past. I don't think I've been too harsh on it, but I have never sung its praises. But it was interesting for me to watch it this time, and knowing how I'm going to feel more about some of the things that I'm seeing at play now, like also already knowing who Missy is and knowing that I freaking love Missy. So I actually think that Deep Breath is better on a rewatch because the mystery and suspenseful elements, to me at the time that they were introduced, didn't mean a lot. At the time that she was introduced, Missy was just, oh, I guess this is what they're going to build the mystery box around. Who's Missy? What's with the heaven? And that's me in the mystery box season arcs. I was done with them by now. I was ready for them to be done. So that's all she was to me when she was first introduced. And Capaldi's Doctor, I didn't quite have a grip on yet. And watching him here, knowing how he's going to be later, it puts it into a new context. So it's not a matter of, I'm worried that I won't get on this Doctor's wavelength. It's more of a, oh, right, he started all the way over there, and I'm going to get to watch him end up over here. So this, I actually find a lot more enjoyable on a rewatch. Whether you want to consider that a positive or a negative, given that it's not that in a vacuum watching it a second time makes it better, but it's knowing everything that happens later retroactively on a rewatch makes it better. You could actually consider that a fault of the episode in and of itself in some ways, because it really should stand better on an initial viewing, and it shouldn't require a revisit to see more good in it, even though I do. So, a little bit conflicted on that. So let's talk about some of the specifics of what we've got here. Capaldi right off, big focus on the grumpy, which he's very good at. And there are some scenes that are really brilliant for that. Him in that alleyway, the whole who frowned me this face, and his realization that he's Scottish and he can be really cross and complain about things. That was great. I love that. There's a really wonderful moment. And I liked this perspective on the idea of one of the reasons possibly why the Doctor has this face, because Clara is confused that he regenerated. It's a refreshed life, but he looks older. Why does he look older if this is a new, fresh life? And I like Madame Vastra comparing it to her veil, that when she goes out, she wears, Madame Vastra wears the veil to cover the fact that she's a lizard. And when she's out in public, so that people will accept her. And the Doctor wore the face of a younger man to be more accepted. And him letting himself look older is him removing the veil and letting her see him a little bit more nakedly. I also like that that is a perspective that's coming from Vastra, which makes it her interpretation of what's happening. Because that's one of those, and I talk about this with Doctor Who from time to time, it's one of those things where I like that interpretation, but if you don't, if you think that's BS, you don't have to take that on board for your own headcanon, because it's not coming from the Doctor, it's coming from another character, and it's what she thinks about the Doctor, and you can agree or disagree. I don't even know if I agree with that assessment that she gives, but I think it's a neat idea all the same, and it was nice to hear it vocalized. So, since I brought up Vastra, Jenny, Strax, Paternoster Gang, pretty decently used. They're fun here. Strax has some good moments. Him playing off of Clara and just, continuing to call her boy and, talking to her about getting the Doctor back, and then we will dissolve him in acid. Strax, no. And then we will not dissolve him in acid. I'm like, oh, God. He's ridiculous. But, as long as it's not about him being dumb, so, the pratfall towards the end, could have, Jenny and Vastra descend gracefully like ribbon dancing ninjas, and he just falls. That gag I could have done without, because that felt more like he's dumb. But gags like the dissolved in acid, that's, love that. Some of the stuff with Vastra, as much as I like that conversation that I just said about the veil, the whole fact that, they cut away and they come back and her veil is off, and Clara's like, when did you remove the veil? And she said, when you stopped needing to see it, or something to that effect. I'm like, that was if they were going to have it just not be there, I would rather they had not drawn attention to it and just do it and let the moment speak for itself. Okay, I need to touch on the T-Rex, because even on a rewatch, even trying to come at it from a perspective where it's not going to bother me so much, I still really don't like the fact that the T-Rex is burned alive. That really bothers me. And it's kind of dumb. I don't mean that the T-Rex burns alive. The fact that the T-Rex burns alive is actually kind of lazy. The fact that it bothers me as much as it does is kind of dumb. I'm copping to that. So the thing about this is, here's what I will grant. I will grant that the Doctor himself has a proper appreciation of how awful this is. So it does help that at least one character is feeling that weight of how cruel and unnecessary this was. But the fact that it is so cruel and unnecessary, and I don't just mean on the part of the villains, I mean on the part of the writer, on the part of Steven Moffat, that's what I don't like. Because you can make whatever argument you want to me, about it showing what the villains were capable of, or what have you. None of that was necessary, because we already knew that. We had already seen implied that, they were stripping parts out of human beings. We could have had something else lead them onto the spontaneous combustion thing other than the dinosaur. The reason it happens is the same reason that, say, the Tritivores die in Planet of the Dead. Because to resolve them, or the T-Rex, in any other way eats up screen time that the writer has decided he doesn't want to bother doing. So they just kill it. And that is lazy and cruel. So there is barely a narrative justification for the T-Rex going up in flames, and I don't think it needed to be the T-Rex in order for it to do that, but the reason it was the T-Rex was because Moffat didn't want to have to figure out how to deal with this thing. So just burn it up. Now it's not a dangling plot thread anymore. I don't have to worry about it. It just feels cruel rewatching it. It just feels cruel for me to watch. And I don't enjoy that. I really don't. I probably get way more hung up on that than is justified. But like she didn't deserve that. She was scared and lonely, and the Doctor recognized that, which I appreciate for him in terms of his showing an ability to have empathy, which is something he's going to have issues with at other points. But, damn, Moffat, come on. Anyways, Clara's actually pretty good in this one. And see, I've said this before. Clara rubbed me the wrong way when she was first introduced in Series 7 because she is more of a plot device than a character. She was the impossible girl before she was the companion. I don't just mean like the order of things, like in terms of the ranking, the importance of what she was in the story. Impossible girl, companion. She was way more important as a plot device than she was as a character. She just happened to be filling that role. So now that the Impossible Girl thing is over, she feels much more like a character and less like a plot device. And it also helps that I am personally of the opinion that her chemistry with Capaldi, even at this early stage, is better than the chemistry she had with Smith. So this is where I started enjoying Clara more. Seeing her bounce off of him, and especially with Capaldi, because he irritates her, but he's so blunt at her at the same time that he winds her up and she bites back at him. And I like that dynamic. I think they have a fun bicker. Not all bickering is fun, but I find their bickering to be fun and enjoyable. The thing with the aliens and sort of the bringing back and referencing the clockwork robots from Girl in the Fireplace. It's fine. I don't really have strong feelings one way or the other on that. There isn't really a particularly strong connection or a reason for there to be that connection, but it also doesn't hurt anything. You know, for what they needed the villains to be doing for the narrative to work, you can fit that in the mold of the clockwork droids. So why not have it be kind of a return of them? There's no reason for it not to be. So, yeah, sure. It doesn't blow me away. I don't love it, but yeah, hey, that works. Cool. The introduction of Missy, it is just that. It is just, ooh, don't you wonder who this is? I enjoy it more because I now know who it is, and I know how much I love Missy. Again, though, a bit going too much on the nose with the thing. A bit like Vastra having to draw attention to the fact that she had lifted the veil. Having Missy actually ask the question, did you jump or did he push you? I couldn't tell. I'm like, we just had that moment. We watched it, and we got to not know. So why are you pointing out in dialogue the thing that we just watched? The ambiguity. Why? I have slightly mixed feelings about that moment as well. I suppose it was just kind of a way to tease out, how different is this Doctor in terms of what he is or isn't willing to do in his own moral compass, which I suppose is fair enough, but the idea of, is he more willing to take a life in like direct action feels like a kind of a cheap way to build that tension, especially when they did it much better earlier in the same episode by having him appear to abandon Clara and did that tension there really well. And yes, he comes back and he rescues her, but he did still leave her in a situation where she might have died. And that's a situation where, like, is he getting careless? Is he trusting her too much? Is he not appreciating the danger that he's putting her in? What happened there? That gives us tension. That gives us reason to question and have some doubts about this doctor without having to have it be, did he push this guy or did the guy jump? Like, you had a much more organic and interesting version of that same question already. And then you do it again, and then you have Missy actually vocalize it out loud. Why? There's no need for that. Pacing on this is also a little weird because it's an extra long episode. Like, it's longer than some of the specials. It's an hour 15. And I'm not entirely sure why. There's nothing about the plot or the progression that needs extra time. And I'm not sure that it really does all that much to take advantage of it. There are some scenes that I would actually say drag on a little too long. As much as I love it, the scene in the alley where, Who Found Me This Face, that goes on a little too long. Probably by about a minute or so. About a minute longer than it needs to be. And there's a couple of other scenes like that. There's other scenes that are cute, bits that are fine that I think would have been cut out of a tighter story, but their being here don't add that much. It doesn't have enough breathing room to have the more relaxed pace of like a feature length would have, the breathing room for more downtime and whatnot, but it's not enough extra time for it to have that. But at the same time, it's not like filling it in with anything that's a bit more punchy or anything like that. So I'm not sure why they felt the need to make it this long, other than just trying to give Capaldi a big debut, I suppose. The breath holding scene. That was good. And a lot of that was down to Jenna Coleman's performance. The little lurches when like her body instinctively wants to draw breath and she's forcing it to not do that. And this exhausted determination on her face. That's a tense scene. That was really well done, actually. Props to them for that. That was something that I was quite impressed with. I'd kind of forgotten how tense that scene is. When they revisit it towards the end in the fight scene, it's not quite as potent. But that first time when it's just Clara, oh yeah, that's tense stuff. I think that's about everything I wanted to hit. Like I said, there's a lot of little moments that I like. There's a couple of things that don't really matter but bother me. And Moffat, he seems to be having moments where he's either not trusting the audience or he's not trusting his writing. I'm not sure which it is. He's either not trusting his writing to have conveyed everything, or he's not trusting his audience to keep up with him. And things are just being hit a little more on the nose than they need to be and reiterated a little bit more than is necessary, especially considering we're going to get 3 full series of this guy. You don't need to hit this hard on everything right off the bat. But it's solid. It's not bad. It is a decent first outing for the Doctor. And it gives us a little bit of a taste of this Doctor, and it helps that he is trying to figure himself out as well, because there's always a certain element of that, but I would argue that, especially Tennant and Smith, they kind of came out fully formed. Like, they would have lines that said, I'm figuring out who I am, but they seemed to be pretty confident and stayed pretty true to the characterization we saw of them in their very first appearance for the entire run. Whereas Capaldi seems way more uneasy, not quite solid in his footing, trying to figure himself out. Even when Clara hugs him and he says, I don't think I'm a hugging person. Like, he isn't even sure about that. I do appreciate that. Oh, the one other thing, the moment with Matt Smith calling, I'm of two minds about. On the one hand, and I remember it being like a point of debate at the time, it felt like it was undercutting Capaldi's debut by immediately going like, ooh, remember the guy we just got rid of that you miss? Like, are you shooting yourself in the foot a little bit by making that comparison all the stronger? And I can see that argument, but I do think the moment is kind of tender, and it does make sense that it kind of helps with the transition for Clara. And there's also something about, and maybe it's just the direction that my own life has taken in the last few years, but something about Capaldi's line, "You don't see me. You look at me and you don't see me." Yeah, I feel that. So if for no other reason, I like that scene because we get that line. Deep breath. You rewatched it lately? What'd you think about it? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something on down in the comments and let's talk about it. Whole bunch of stuff to do. Like, subscribe, all that sort of things. I have a Patreon. Naturally, doesn't everyone? And you can support and help grow the channel. And I also have a podcast, a bunch of other things. Links in the description. No pressure, though. Because end of the day, you're the council. I just run the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned.